Hello, hello, hello. What is up, everybody? And welcome to week 2 of the DFS slate and week 2 of my brand new show, No Free Squares. Look, last week we were getting started, we were getting comfortable, we were working into things and a little bit the same as the DFS slate as it is for this podcast, right? It's all about trying to find the combinations that work, trying to find the plays that we believe in, and we're always going to stay water, we're going to stay liquid, we are going to stay adapting. So thank you everybody who tuned in for the first time last week. Thanks everybody who's in today. Just want to say off the top, this show primarily we're going to focus on DFS tournaments. That's what we're going to start with. We're going to analyze some trends from last week. We're going to look at the slate this week. And I'm going to talk a little bit about high-level strategy, similar to some of the articles and content that I write in terms of how we attack DFS tournaments. But any questions that you have, whether it's for cash games, whether it's for tournaments, whether it's frankly really any question that you post that's even vaguely related to fantasy football or that I just find interesting, I will answer. So if you're in the chat, feel free to hit me up with your questions. I'm happy to see you. And otherwise, we're going to get going here pretty soon. But first off, Taylor in the chat says, "Hi, Jacob, longtime listener." Yeah, I imagine he's tuned into all one of the episodes we've done. So shout out to Taylor Colt T. Cornell. He says, last week he lost $5. How do I recover? I mean, the easy option is you simply do more lineups this week, and then you try to win that $5 back. You know what? This is the thing about tournament DFS, man. You usually lose, right? It's all about realizing your expected value, right? Cash games, you get to be Laviska Shenault. You get to just run around the line of scrimmage. You get to catch 4-yard targets, and you get to just churn out PPR points. But in tournaments, baby, we're DJ Chark, right? We're running down the field, and we have all these air yards. Will we ever realize our air yards? Probably not. But we're going to try. We're going to try and put ourselves in a position to win. Matty B is in the chat. My guy Matty B says, let's fucking go. Absolutely, let's fucking go. Let's go, baby. It's week 2. This is my favorite week of the whole season to play DFS because I talked about this in my article. I opened up. I said, have you ever played the game 20 questions? Right? Everybody's played the game 20 questions, right? I start with something. It's a person, place, or thing. And then you start guessing. Okay, so you guess it's a thing. Then you guess it's a food. Then you guess it's a fruit. Right? There's all of these different possibilities as to what that actual thing could be. It could be a mango. It could be a kumquat. If you count this truly mixed berry as a fruit, it could be a truly, right? And frankly, I mean, look, it's a Saturday afternoon. I am not above the truly, by the way, on a Saturday afternoon. They're truly delicious. You don't know what it's going to be, and that's what this DFS week is. There's all these different trends from week 1 that we see. And for whatever reason, we etch some of them in stone, and others were like, I don't know, it's probably going away, right? And so I think the big key is how do we actionalize important information, and how do we try to make sure that we're ahead of the market? So that's some of the stuff we're going to get into today. As I said, if you're just joining us, we will answer all your questions. We will get through a bit of a week 1 review. We will go over some of the biggest trends, and then we will take our walk down narrative street in terms of some of the biggest focuses of people going into week 2. How do we try and take advantage of that? How do we pivot away from that? Then we'll get into some of my favorite plays, some of my favorite games. And at the end, we will do week 2 of GPP roulette, where I will spin our little roulette wheel. And we will see what it lands on. And then we will build a lineup as fast as humanly possible around that to show you that you really can pretty much play whoever you want and get a fun, correlated lineup. So with that said, I will see you for the start of week 2 in just about 20 seconds. All right, let's get into the week 1 review here. Week 1 overall for me, and from a cash perspective, was super profitable. I was sort of joking that I don't do any cash content. I do these tournament shows on Saturday. I do a tournament article that gets released on Player Profiler on Friday. I really was cash was doing the bankroll in week 1. We had Hurts in there, we had Smith in there, we had Hopkins in there. That was all awesome. Tournaments, it was a bit of a mixed bag. I think that we played well. I think that the key from week 1 really was getting off those super cheap, super chalk wide receivers. We talked about that a bit on the show, right? It was Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Marquez Callaway, and who's the other one that everybody was jamming in? Marvin Jones, Right. Those four, everyone was jamming them in. And really only Marvin was the one that paid off, right? Callaway and Elijah were a stone cold disaster. Elijah Moore Rondell Moore, sorry, was fine. But frankly, he was lucky to even do that well. He didn't actually run that many routes. And you easily could have survived without Rondell Moore and his 4 for 59 or whatever it was. The best one actually ended up being Waddle, I believe. Waddle or Marvin Jones. And, Waddle was really sparsely rostered, right? Why is that? And of course, everybody's drafting these rookies, the expensive rookie receivers, expensive. They went off, right? Chase had a great game at really low ownership. Smith had a great game at decent ownership. So I think the key was getting off of those. And then the key ended up being, did you play the Mahomes double stack, right? That's really what it ended up being. I had a lineup. I talked about this in the article. The way I look at my review is never like exactly how much did I profit. It's also never how much did my lineup score. What's important to me is that I get in lineups that I think were good process when I look back on it, where the process at least made sense, and did I get it in at a good rostership, right? For anyone who's just tuning in, for anyone who's kind of new to tournament DFS, the two biggest elements are always going to be rostership, right? And I'm going to say ownership. I'm going to. So just catch me. I'm going to try not to, but I will. It's always rostership. And then it's, of course, projection and correlation. And you're balancing those three things, right? You want players who project well, but you ideally want them that correlate, and you want them that not everybody else is playing. So last week, my best lineup, it was a Russell Wilson double stack with Tyler Lockett and Gerald Everett and Jonathan Taylor coming back. I came 17th place in a 430-person, really small field tournament, and it was drawing super live to do better than that. It was at second place, I think, deep into the third quarter of the afternoon slate, and then it just got trucked by Mahomes teams. I remember the Tyreek Hill 75-yard touchdown. I think I was in fourth, and I looked up and I went, oh, yeah, okay, we just lost a lot of money. And that's just what happens. But really, it was a shot on goal. I was super happy with the lineup. I mean, we had Russ at, I think, 3%. Lockett, I believe, was like 4% in that contest. Everett, similar. Taylor, similar. And all of those pieces did well enough that they could kind of get by, right? And then we just needed other things to break our way. I was able to get Corey Davis in there. He had a fantastic game. Higgins was solid. And we even survived a total dud by A.J. Green because all the touchdowns went to Christian Kirk. Just so happened in the late games, I had Kamara. Game script got away from him, and the Mahomes double went off. But I think if you built those similar lineups with the Mahomes double, obviously you were laughing your way to the bank. So that's kind of week one. If anyone has questions about week one, otherwise, I'm just going to talk about some trends. And this is one of them. I'm going to talk about running back usage. So what a perfect transition. What a perfect transition. Why didn't Eckler get any targets last game? Well, this is what I was talking about with the 20 questions, right? We don't know. We don't know. Ben Gretsch, who I mean, if anyone listens to any podcast that I do, I just quote Ben Gretsch eternally. But he talked a lot in, I think, one of the best short blog posts really of the off season. And it's entitled Some Thoughts on Anti-Fragility on his Substack, Stealing Signals. And he talked about sort of this Lokian nodes theory, where there's all these different nodes in the timeline, and we don't necessarily know exactly, which outcome leads to which. And when I look at something like Eckler having 20 targets, there's so many different possible explanations. One of them is just random variance. Last year, he averaged up to, I think, close to 10 expected points as a pass catcher for the season. He had one target in week one. Totally random. Another is that it's a coaching staff issue, right? Joe Lombardi, new offensive coordinator. Who is their offensive coordinator? Or, well, their play caller? Anthony Lynn. What did he do? He went to Detroit. They threw the running backs 20 freaking times, right? And then the other explanation is that he just had a hamstring issue, and so they were limiting him, and then that showed up in the target count. I think it could be any one of those three things, right? I think that one of them, being a coaching scheme change, would be a legitimate cause for concern. And stacking onto that, he only ran 51% of the routes. Last year, he was usually between 70 and 80% of the routes. But then on the bright side, he got 4 touches inside the 10-yard line, right? So Anthony Lynn, maybe he got more targets. Maybe this year, he doesn't get as many targets, but he's getting opportunities for more touchdowns. Maybe the profile changes. What we do know is that he's obviously a really, really good pass-catching back. He's not going to have 0 targets. And exactly, AJ Talk Sports says in the chat, he's obviously not going to get 0 catches a game going forward. Yes, he is definitely not going to get 0 catches a game going forward. The difference is, can we still count on Eckler? And HA continues to basically finish my sentences. He says, yeah, can we keep thinking that Eckler is the guy who can get us 10 plus targets? Well, I don't know if I'm willing to say that they're done. right? It's one game. It's looking less likely, right? Like our prior coming into the season was maybe Anthony Lynn being gone means he's not going to get that anymore. Maybe it doesn't matter. I would say right now after week one, probably looking more and more unlikely. But, what we're doing is in DFS, we're talking about ranges of outcomes. So for me personally, am I playing Austin Eckler in a cash game this week? I'm not, because he ran 51% of the routes, and it's fully possible that's just his role going forward. Maybe he's just a 2 to 3 to 4 target a week type player. But in a tournament, we don't have the information yet. We don't know exactly what is signal, what's noise, what's a fluke, and which part of the story we're being told. So I think that if we're looking at Eckler as a tournament play this week, to me it kind of depends on what the field's going to do. And I think the field is kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm expecting it to be about between 10 and 15% rostered in a lot of fields. And considering how popular this game is, that's not totally insurmountable. Like that's probably going to be behind some of the roster rate we see on Lamb and Allen, potentially even behind Cooper, might even be behind Zeke. So I'm open to just assuming that it's going to be okay with Eckler, but maybe it's not. I don't know. Right? We're all in that kind of range of outcomes. But beyond that, with running back usage, I mean that's I think the biggest thing from week one. What I noticed personally was that there was sort of a split between people's takeaways looking at situational usage versus touch-based usage, and which matters more, right? And it's probably a balance act of both, right? I think depending on your outlook on what really matters at running back, people draw different conclusions. And specifically on one side of this, we have sort of the situational usage was great. And that's Najee Harris, Ezekiel Elliott, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. All three of those guys, they played a ton of snaps. They played in all situations. They played in the green zone. They played on pass downs. All of those money touches you want, they were on the field for. However, they did not receive them, right? They just weren't the key part of how their offense wanted to move the ball. On the other side of that, you had Jonathan Taylor, Miles Sanders, and Antonio Gibson. And of course, he's not on the slate now. He played on Thursday night, where they actually got a lot of touches in week one. Specifically, they got a lot of pass game work in week one, but they weren't necessarily seeing the situational usage that you wanted. They weren't seeing 80% of the snaps. You saw Sanders give up a green zone touch to Gainwell that he scored on. You saw all of them lose most of the 2-minute and long down and distance work to their pass catching teammates. And so what do you focus on more? To me, I think it's a bit of a mix of both. I think personally, I would rather have the running back long term, if this holds up over the course of the season, who's getting touches. Like you don't get points for snap rate, right? Snap rate is a signal of potential things to come. But after week one, it's a little easier to say, okay, this person got the snap rate. Maybe that was just game plan. Maybe it was just variant. So I would say I'm actually kind of bullish on Zeke from a DFS perspective. Anyone who follows me knows I'm not bullish on him from a talent perspective, but I'm kind of bullish on him in a DFS perspective if I'm betting that it was just a fluke. And we'll talk a lot more about that game later. Lindsay in the chat says, how do you decide where in your lineup to spend big money? That is so dependent to me on the slate. And of course, by the way, FF Aviator says, I actually do play at a point per snap league. First of all, just I'm owned, right? I'm owned by that comment. And also, why are you playing a point per snap league? Like that's got to be the most sicko league possible. So can you roster like a left tackle in a point per snap league and you just put them in the flex and you're just getting points every time? I have a lot of questions. Back to Lindsay's question. How do you decide your lineup for spending money? Totally dependent. So for me at cash games, I'm usually wanting to spend big money at running back, usually, just because I want to lock in guys that have everything I was just talking about, all the snaps, all the touches, and all the situational touches, right? I want Christian McCaffrey, who can put up 27 freaking points without even scoring a touchdown. I want Kamara. I want Dalvin Cook, where you have that really safe floor built in. Because we saw with wide receivers, like even expensive wide receivers can bust, with Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, right? It's a little bit more variance week to week. But in a tournament scenario, totally depends on what I think the field is going to do. Like last week, I thought that the optimal build for cash games, if you're playing cash games on DraftKings, and I don't, I play my cash games on FanDuel. But if you're playing cash games on DraftKings, the best build was take all the cheap wide receivers who are going to play snaps, who are going to get targets, and then pay up at running back. And then in tournaments, I looked at that and I said, okay, so that's what I want to not do because that's what everyone else is going to do, right? So I think that, yeah, a lot of times you should probably spend up at running back to get that median result. But if there's a week where everyone is doing that, and the way that they're doing that is by playing wide receivers that are kind of fragile, wide receivers that, they're not actually that good. That's why they're so cheap, but everyone's playing them because they want to spend up the running backs. That's when I start experimenting with different builds, especially early in the season, because you'll see running backs who, like Joe Mixon last week, right? Joe Mixon had the workload of an $8,000 running back last week. He played 80% of the snaps. He played in all situations, passing, goal line, etc. He got a frick ton of touches, but people didn't know he was going to have that workload, so he was underpriced. So I would say in general, early in the season, I'm more likely to spend at the mid-range in running back because I'm able to get guys that people don't actually know, including myself, should be high-priced running backs. And then I'm able to, get more in a wide receiver. Last question before I sort of finish up some of this looking back review. But keep sending in questions. I will get to them later in the show if I haven't got them yet. How high are you on Visca this season? I was really high. Didn't love the week 1 usage. His ADOT was still really low. He ran more routes than last season. He ran 79% of the routes. You see between 60 and 70. So some improvement. But I would say that if you're playing a Jacksonville wide receiver this week, I would probably play Chark because he ran more routes and he got more of the downfield work and he got more targets. So probably higher on Chark right now than Shenault. But it's 1 week that could flip back very, very easily. Another big thing that I'm looking at from week 1 is just, I've touched on most of the stuff anyways, actually. I wanted to talk about the cheap receivers. Wanted to talk about the power of contrarian stacks, which I did that with Russell Wilson. This is something actually. The rookie wide receivers, right? I touched on this a little bit, but in general, I think you should be high on every rookie wide receiver really right now. Oh, Christian's in the chat. He's watching the show. I'm pretty sure that he's watching. I wish he didn't watch that moment. He said, I'm going to clip that. Yeah, Christian and I have been fighting about Chark and Shenault all summer. And I don't know. I feel like I won that war when he broke his finger because it allowed me to just scoop up all this Chark late. So now I have tons of both. And I'm now impervious to Chark ruining my life because I have all of the Chark. So suck it, Christian. And Kev, if you're in the chat too, you can suck it as well. Go Chark. Love Chark. Always have. Anyway, these rookie wide receivers. I think you should be excited about all of them. You should be excited about Chase and Smith because they had massive air yard shares and they had alpha target shares between 22 and 25%, and they're still underpriced. So I don't know how much roster are we going to get on Chase Smith. I don't think like over 10%. I think you should just probably jam them into your lineups once again this week, wherever it makes sense. I'm going to talk about Smith a little bit more later. And I think you should be actually encouraged about the rest of them too, even the ones that failed, right? Like Elijah Moore and De'Ami Brown were total busts at 3,000, but they ran all the routes. Isn't that why you picked them? Right? Isn't that why you picked them? You're like, oh, these guys got to run all the routes. And then they did. But then now Elijah Moore's 3,500. You're not going to play him. I'm going to play him. I'll play him at 3,500. Why the hell not? He ran all the routes. And he ran them outside. So I don't even care that Crowder's coming back. That's like Braxton Berrios isn't going to run outside. Give you a break. And then on the other side, you had guys like Rondale Moore and Anthony Schwartz, right? Not even the guy we were talking about. Didn't play a whole lot, but when they did play, they made plays constantly. So, you would think rational coaching sees how good Rondale Moore looked, sees how washed and dusty AJ Green looked, and they go, yeah, okay, I'm going to get more Rondale, and I'm going to have less AJ Green. Maybe you don't see that this week, but you'd expect to see that over the course of the season. All right, when we return, which will be in like 20 seconds. So it's just enough time for me to just, keep drinking Truly without just sucking it back live on air. We're going to take a walk down Narrative Street, where we're going to talk about sort of the biggest narratives that people are talking about going into week 2, whether we should be steering clear on the street or whether we should just drive right into it, and how we can build some lineups that take advantage of a little bit of both. So here we go. We're going to do a car little interlude because we're about to drive down Narrative Street. All right, welcome back. We're going to head down Narrative Street. We're going to talk about three big things that I think are very integral to how people are approaching the week 2 slate. Number one of that is going to be, I'm going to save the most impactful for last, okay? Number one is everything related to Najee Harris. If this was DFS 2 years ago, and by the way, I'm pretty much stealing this line of thinking from Eric Beinfor and Jordan Cooper on the Theory of DFS podcast. They talked about this a lot. If you're playing DFS 2 years ago, Najee Harris would actually be the best play this week because he had 100% of the snaps, and yet he put up a dud. Maybe because he's just not very good, or maybe because it's just variance, and that's just what happens. One of the two. And then this week, everyone would not want to play Najee because they'd be checking the box score, and they'd see, oh, he had 6 fantasy points, and he ruined my cash game lineup, and he's done. This week, it's not happening, guys. Like, everyone has player projections, okay? People that are playing DFS seriously in these contests, they have projections. They're reading the content, and Najee Harris is not a buy low opportunity, okay? He's not. He's the highest projected point per dollar player on the slate. He is going to be in lineups. If you check ownership projections, she's going to be like 25% rostered in your contest. Now, that doesn't make him a terrible play at all, right? If you believe in Najee Harris, yeah, I mean, look, I'll tell you right now, I was working on cash lineups before. Najee Harris, lock button in my cash lineup. Najee Harris is going to be in 0 of my tournament lineups for me personally, because I think that there's other chalk that I would rather play, right? Like I would rather play the game that's going to shoot out between the Cowboys and the Chargers and play a running back who looked brutal last week, in my opinion, at least. I'd rather play Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool as leverage off of that. I'd rather just ignore that game entirely. But I think you can certainly play Najee. The point is, if you're playing Najee Harris, just know you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. Everyone is extremely aware. Look at this. Look at the flow. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, T. Thank you, T Seal. Oh, that's you, Trap. I didn't even realize with the name here coming through the YouTube. Yeah, you know, every once in a while, I actually wash and I emerge from my cave, my gambling cave, and I wash my hair, and that's what you get on Saturday here at No Free Squares. The other narrative is how we're reacting to wide receiver usage. Everyone has been talking about Brandon Ayuk this week. Oh my gosh, Brandon Ayuk played 15 out of 27 snaps. It is an absolute travesty. He's dust. He should be dropped for Tim Patrick. Who else should he be dropped for? Probably Trent Sherfield. Probably dropping him for Trent Sherfield. Should you play KJ Osborne over Brandon Ayuk this week? It's like, I mean, if you're a Brandon Ayuk backer, and Lord knows I am, you're worried. It's not good, right? You want him to play 27 out of 27 routes. But a little bit up the road was Robert Woods, Bobby Trees, who ran 18 of the 27 routes. And he didn't even have a hamstring. But Sean McVay didn't give any fancy quotes about it. And so he was just running behind Van Jefferson, and no one seems to particularly care or talk about it. I mean, if you're doing DFS this week, like I'll play Van Jefferson. I'll play Van Jefferson for sure. He's like $3,500 on DraftKings. And I think you can extend this out as well, just beyond, you know, Ayuk and beyond Woods. Look for opportunities like Cedric Wilson, for example. Okay? He's the third wide receiver that everyone's going to be all about. He's super cheap. He's like $3,100 on DraftKings. Everybody's going to be funneling in Cedric Wilson. You can play Jalen Guyton in the same game, who ran more routes, a higher percentage of routes than Wilson did, even after Gallup got hurt. He did it because that was the game plan. Wilson did it because someone got hurt. You have no idea what the Cowboys are going to do after a week to game plan around this. Maybe they just run 11 personnel and Cedric Wilson plays every single route, and he's just Michael Gallup now. It's just Cedric Gallup. Maybe they're a 12 personnel offense now, and they're going to run Dalton Schultz and Blake Jarwin out there every snap. Maybe they're going to do what they also showed they might do in the first quarter last week. They're going to play Zeke and Pollard together. We have no idea. We probably know what the Chargers are going to do, right? They're probably going to play Jalen Guyton because they had all offseason to determine what they were going to do in week 1. They decided that Jalen Guyton was going to play almost all the snaps, and he's in the same game environment, same crazy point total. I don't know. Are people going to play Guyton? Probably a little bit, but I bet that Guyton's going to probably be like 3% rostered, and I bet you that Wilson is going to be like 12%. I'd rather play Guyton. FF Aviator says just play Schwartz. Man, from a dynasty perspective, I'm hyped on Anthony Schwartz. Real hyped on Anthony Schwartz. From DFS, am I super excited to play someone who ran half the routes and is now going to probably get game scripted out after like the first 2 minutes against Houston? Not particularly. But if you want to play Schwartz, play whoever you want. He is he's in the roulette wheel, so I might be playing a Schwartz lineup so far. The last narrative I want to talk about, and this is pretty much going to be what we're going to talk about for most of the rest of the show, is Chargers-Cowboys game. Have you heard that the Chargers and Cowboys game might be high scoring? Have you considered that the Chargers-Cowboys game might have a lot of points? Has that occurred to anyone? Have you considered that? Personally, it has occurred to me. Yep, it's occurred to me. Imagine fading the Chargers-Cowboys game. Could not be me. Yeah, I guess. Look, TJ Hernandez put out a tweet. I think there's been 22 games over the last 4 years that have had this high of an over-under with this height of a spread. There's good reason why you'd want to play the Cowboys-Chargers game. And I think that there's pretty much 3 viable paths to do it if you're going to do it. And that's what we're going to talk about right when we return after another very, very quick interlude so that I can just, keep drinking a little bit of water. All right, Chargers-Cowboys game. That's what everybody's here for. Are we going to play it or are we not going to play it? And like I said, there's going to be 3 main options. So number 1 option is you simply don't play it. Number 2 option, this is in tournaments, of course, is you play it and you get really weird with how you play it. And then number 3, of course, is you play it normally and then you have to get really weird elsewhere. And so you have to figure out, what is the most painful. I talked earlier, it's that you're combining in tournaments correlation, projection, and leverage, right? Correlation, projection, and leverage, or rostership. Where are you willing to just eat the chalk? Are you willing to eat the chalk on this game? Are you willing to eat the chalk on Najee Harris? Are you willing to eat the chalk on Cooper Kupp, who everyone and their dog wants to play? Right? The answer can't be all of them, and your answer probably shouldn't be none of them because if everyone's playing them, they probably project well. So let's start with option 1. You don't want to play the Chargers and Cowboys game at all, right? Why would you want to do that? Well, because everyone's going to be on it, and essentially your win condition now is all of these people are putting their eggs in that basket. And what if just weird stuff happens, right? What if it's a blowout? What if it's just a game that Chargers score first drive, they get a defensive touchdown, it's 14-0, 21-0, I don't know, 28-0, someone gets hurt, and it ends up like Packers and Saints last week. Or like Packers-Bucks last year. Do you remember that? Everybody wanted to play that game, and it was a total dud because it was a blowout. I don't know. What if the Cowboys come out, they decide after week 1, we really need to establish the run, and they have a 11-minute first drive where they give Zeke 9 carries, and the clock is just draining on every single carry. Even games that seem unfailable can always find a way to fail. Or what if it's just a fine game and it's like 27-24, but the Cardinals and Vikings game is 35-31, right? That's all of those things are possible. And essentially what you're saying if you're fading this game is, yeah, okay, this game might look good, but I think that the odds that it fails are a little bit higher than what the market is anticipating by how much they're playing it. And so you're going to go in and you're going to take a stance that, all right, I'm going to just leave myself exposed on this game. And if it totally bombs or if it's just mediocre, if there's no plays that I have, I have a massive edge over the field because I'm going to have access to all these different other games. Hopefully one of them shoots out and I'm going to get that really low rostership. Right? That's kind of what I was doing last week where I didn't really play much Titans-Cardinals when we got the blowout. And yeah, Kyler went off. But he was so expensive, you could easily have made up for that with a Hurts. You easily made up for that with a Wilson. And Hopkins went off, but I mean, Lockett outscored him, right? That was kind of where I was at with that game. This game, I think, is slightly more intriguing to play because there are so many options of how to play it. And that's your option 2, right? Play it, but get weird. So what's the most standard? Okay, if your goal was to just finish top half, if I was telling you have to just play a cash lineup, but your cash lineup has to involve a stack of this game, which is how a lot of people play these tournaments. They build their cash lineup and they go, okay, well, now it's a tournament, so I'll make a stack. Right? So you probably play either Herbert with Keenan Allen and you bring back Lamb or Cooper, probably Lamb because he's cheaper, or you would do Dak with Lamb or Cooper, and then you'd bring back with Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, right? Those are kind of your basic. And so if you're doing this route, you want to basically avoid that. You want to go, okay, who are the other options I can play? Okay. Other options. First option is always look at the running backs, right? Because when you talk about leverage plays from a shootout, the running back is the natural leverage play, and especially a running back like Zeke, who's more of a running back, right? Not that pass-happy target back. What if what just happens, one of those cases of it failing happens, right? 11-minute drive, feed Zeke, feed Zeke, feed Zeke, feed Zeke, feed Zeke. Oh, and he gets a 1-yard touchdown, and there's 3 minutes left in the first quarter after the first drive, right? If you have Zeke, that's awesome. You just got 60 yards and a touchdown in the first quarter. You're living it. You go into DraftKings and there's a little flame logo by Zeke Elliott. And then you look at Justin Herbert, snowflake. Dak Prescott, snowflake. CeeDee Lamb, snowflake. Right? That's how you're creating this leverage. You're going to say, okay, Zeke is going to make this game fail, and then I will collect the points. Right? Every time they feed Zeke, they're feeding me. Right? That's one option. Other options, if you do want to do the full game stack, is you're going, okay, I'm going to maximize this benefit more, right? What does correlation mean? I always say this in every article. Correlation is not a ceiling raiser, it's a ceiling reacher, because you're maximizing the benefit of one correct assumption. So you have to think about, okay, everybody's assuming this game is going to go well. How do I maximize this benefit even more? How do I push it even further? Okay, well, what about these tertiary options? I mean, if this game is going to go like 35-31 or 38-35, it can't just be the regular guys, right? What about Jalen Guyton, right? I talk about Jalen Guyton. That's one of my favorite plays. What if he catches a 60-yard touchdown? Speeds the game up, puts the Cowboys back on offense. He gets a bunch of points, and Herbert gets that point. So, right, and it takes money out of the pocket of Allen owners. So what if I look at this game, I say, okay, I'm going to play Justin Herbert with Jared Cook, Jalen Guyton, and Dalton Schultz, right? What if I'm going to play Dak Prescott with Cedric Wilson, Amari Cooper, and Jared Cook, right? What if I look at these other tertiary options? And specifically, my favorites are Cook, because I think he's a really excellent play, actually. I don't think there's going to be that much ownership on him, because I think a lot of people are going to want to get up to Waller. A lot of people want to play Kittle. And in his range specifically, people are going to want to play Fant because they just lost Judy. Higbee, because I think he's probably the best projecting point per dollar tight end right now after his role in week 1. I think you might be able to get Jared Cook sub 10% in a really highly stacked game. And he was top 5 in air yards, the tight end position, top 5 in slot snaps, the tight end position. And he's always going to be drawing live for touchdowns. Had 8 targets. I'm going to play Jared Cook a lot. I'll play Jared Cook when I stack this game, and I'll play Jared Cook as a leverage play when I'm not stacking this game. The other option, too, that people might bring up, and Michael's here saying, okay, to be different, Herbert, Eckler, Cook, bring it back with Pollard or Schultz. Yeah, that would be different. I'm not sure I want to play Pollard. I think that Zeke is already going to be the 3rd or 4th most popular Cowboy. So I'm not sure we need to leverage off of Zeke. I think Zeke is already getting you leverage off of Lamb and Cooper and potentially Cedric Wilson. Like Pollard didn't have that great of a role. He got touches, but he kind of maxed out what his role was. Like you're betting. Actually, I'll tell you this. I certainly wouldn't play Pollard and Schultz. I know you said or, right? But I think there's 2 outcomes where the Cedric Wilson thing doesn't happen. And so they either play more 2 running back sets or more two tight end sets. You could play Pollard. I don't know. Pollard's like, he's not even cheap. I think he's like 5,300 or something on DraftKings. I haven't considered playing, to be honest. Like how is Pollard going to end up in a perfect lineup? And this actually leads into my question. My next point was that I think some people will say, okay, if I want to maximize the benefit, I'll overstack it. I actually prefer overstacking. And when I say overstacking, that usually means like not a 2+1. It means like a 3+1 or even a 3+2. I tend to prefer overstacking in under-owned games or underpriced games, right? So say I wanted to stack, I don't know, Steelers Raiders. Is anyone going to be playing anybody in Steelers Raiders like other than Najee and a little bit of Waller? Not really. Okay. So Steelers Raiders goes off. I'm kind of the only one benefiting from it, so I may as well just overstack it. Because if it's the best game on the slate, who am I competing with? Like nobody. It's just me over here on Steelers Raiders Island. So I'm open to playing like sure, give me Carr, give me Waller, give me Ruggs, give me Claypool, and give me I don't know, maybe Deontay too or Juju. Right? Why not? Why not just play 5 guys? Like that's fine to me. If you're going to play Arizona, Minnesota, right? Give me Kyler with Rondale, with Kirk, and with Dalvin Cook and KJ Osborne. Like, I think that's totally fine. In this game, I wouldn't because if you're playing like Herbert and Allen and Lamb as a core or anything similar to that, everyone's benefiting with you. Right? The rising tide of this game will lift many, many boats, yours with others. And so then it just becomes a 5v5 with the field, right? You got those 3 parts right, they got 3 parts right. But if you continue to stack this game, you're kind of taking touchdowns off the table that are eligible for you to score. You really need to beat people at other positions. And it's like, are you going to be able to have the highest possible ceiling remaining if you just keep stacking onto this game? Not really. Especially if you start with popular plays. So if I'm going to overstack it, I'll overstack it by putting multiple cheap assets like Guyton and Cook, or your example, it makes a lot of sense, right? Eckler, Cook, and then bring it back with Schultz, right? That makes sense. But I wouldn't do something like Herbert, Allen, Cook, Schultz, Lamb. I think that's kind of drawing a little bit dead outside of maybe really small field stuff. Anyway, that's a long story short. That's option 2. Is you just sort of stack it and then you make it weird. And the other option is you stack it and you get weird elsewhere. One of my favorite little mini correlations that I think will probably be not super popular would be like Damian Harris and Corey Davis. I like Corey Davis also as a one-off. I think like you should basically just go through, and if you can find players that you think will play snaps, but there's a reason that makes them a little bit repulsive to you, either the team is bad, the matchup is bad, whatever else, that means they probably won't be very rostered because other people will be equally repulsed. And then you just put them in your lineup, right? Because if you're going to be, living the life here with this big, juicy Dallas Chargers stack, like you better get unique elsewhere. Otherwise, you're just continuing to lift more and more and more boats with your tide on every single play. And what you need out of each play, the threshold you need to actually win, just gets higher and higher and higher, and it's like catching a falling knife. So, long story short, the way I would look at Dallas, LA, number 1, you don't play it at all. Number 2, you play it, but you try to play it with weirder options that get you benefit from the shootout, but also take points away from more popular options. Number 3 is you just play it straight, and then you really need to get weird elsewhere. I would say my personal favorite options are 1 and 2. I probably won't be doing a lot of 3. I'll be doing a lot of 1 and a lot of 2 in my lineups. Last thing we're going to talk about before we get to my personal favorite game of the week, and before we get to GPP Roulette to finish out the show, is I want to talk about late swap. And I'm going to talk about how important late swap can be in general, and in cash, and in tournaments, and especially for this week. I will do that right when we return. All right, everybody, let's talk a little bit about late swap. A lot of people, I think, associate late swap with cash. For the record, late swap, what does it mean? It means if you're playing the main slate, there are the noon games and there are the 3 o'clock games. After the noon games are pretty much done, you look at your lineups. And basically what you need to do is, if your lineup is not looking very good, then you want to get off of the most popular plays, right? Because if you're here and Your opponent is here, right? A lot of people think about this in terms of like a cash game head to head. You probably can guess what they're going to play, right? Just by looking at what the best plays are, looking at how much money they have remaining. You need to make up ground. So you can't just play the same guys that they are, or you're going to fall behind even further, right? You're never going to be able to catch up. So usually people think about late swap from that perspective, which is, okay, I need to swap from, like last week, for instance, right? If you had a not awesome team. So my team that was really live, I had a fantastic start after the early slate. And Kamara and the Dolphins D was all I had left. I looked at it and I was like, you know what? I think I'm live to win this thing. So I'm just going to ride Kamara. But if I was in a tough spot, I would have been like, you know what? Yeah, Kamara is not going to get it done because he's going to be 27% rostered. He was my highest rostered player. I'm going to have to late swap that off to Chubb. And I'm going to have to hope that Kamara fails. That's going to bring everybody else down. And then Chubb can buoy me way up if he has a big game. In a tournament perspective, it really is the same thing. And it's so important in tournament perspective. And it's so important this week. So Chargers, Dallas, right? We just talked about it. But you don't really have to make your decision now. Probably the biggest thing that I'm going to look at doing is I want to at least get a few plays in early. So specifically, some plays that I like in the early games. I like Robinson. He saw like 11 targets last week going up against the Bengals. $6,200. I mean, I don't know. Are people going to play Allen Robinson? Are people going to want to play Bears? I don't think so. Correlates great with Mixon, or you can do the opposite way. I think you can play Montgomery, and then you can play Chase or Higgins. I really like the 49ers-Eagles game. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. I actually like Bills-Dolphins. I mean, the Bills, they came out as pass-happy as ever. They're still play fast. I mean, they sucked, but I don't think they'll suck this week, so I'm happy to play the Bills again. I always want to play the Bills. I want to get a few plays in early because let's say I play, like, I don't know, Beasley and Waddle and a defense in Joe Mixon in the early slate. If everything is firing on all cylinders, Aviator says Beasley. Oh, baby, am I playing Beasley this week, man. Beasley got 14 targets, and he's 4,600. He's right next to Waddle, who's in the same game, who I'm pretty sure everyone wants to play. He's also pretty underneath Chase, who everyone should want to play at 5,000. Like Beasley, I'm actually like quite into Cole Beasley this week at 4,600. I can't imagine that he's going to draw more than like 6-7% roster, and he's, I'll tell you what, he's a lot more than 6-7% of my rosters, baby. I'm all in on Cole Beasley this week. You get to have a free look, right? And if you just nut your early plays, okay, so let's say I played a little Beasley Waddle mini correlation, and Beasley's sitting there, he has 20 points. Waddle's sitting there, he has 20 points. None of the games really go off. And I'm looking at it and I'm in a really great position. Okay, let's do this, right? Let's play Dallas Chargers, because what did I say? If you play Dallas Chargers, you need to have everything else go right. Well, if everything else already went right, if I know that it went right on my tertiary pieces, then fuck it. Let's jam it in, right? It's popular for a reason. It's the best game. Fuck it. I'm going to play Herbert. I'm going to play Allen. I'm going to play Lamb. And let's ride. San Diego Superchargers, right? If it goes kind of mediocre, or maybe my plays do well, but it looks like there's other really live lineups. Like what's another game from the early slate that people are actually like? Yeah, 49ers Eagles, right? Let's say I don't actually have any 49ers Eagles, but Hurts goes for 30 and Smith goes for 20, and I'm looking at them and they go, oh shit, like I have to actually hold up these lineups. That's where maybe I flip. And there's really good other options in the late swap, right? There's going to be Minnesota, Arizona. That's one of my favorite games. Both those teams came out, they were pass heavy. Arizona's always going to play fast. A lot of options there that I'm into. And Tampa and the Falcons. I feel like people don't really want to play that game because everyone's given up on the Falcons. And maybe we should, but it's been 1 week. Maybe the Falcons aren't that bad, but Tampa's really fun, right? We can always play Brady with 2 pass catchers. So that's an easy option for me, right? If I build a skeleton lineup around Chargers Dallas, and then I decide when I get there, okay, I want to pivot. All right, let's do Brady, Godwin, Evans, and Pitts instead of, Herbert, Allen, Cooper, and Cook. I don't know exactly how the price work out, but the point is you can get something around that. So late swap's going to be key this week. Quickly want to catch up in the chat. David says, how chalky are the Browns D going to be this week? Probably not super chalky, actually, because they're going to be super expensive. I don't think people like to pay up for D. If I had to guess, I think that the Jets actually might draw a decent amount of ownership. They project really well point per dollar because they're so cheap. If the Seattle weather goes crazy, people might play the Seahawks. I think that people are going to play the Bengals a lot against the Bears. I don't know. I'm not very perfect at projecting ownership on defense, but I don't think the Browns are going to be as chalky as you think. But I also probably won't play any of the Browns. Like I don't know. There's a lot of good plays on the slate. Like I don't know. It's like if I'm staring at a lineup and someone tells me, yeah, you can't play Kyler, Hopkins, and Dalvin Cook this week because you want to play the Browns defense. It's like, do I really want to do that? Like, no, I don't. So I don't. You can play whatever you want, but I'm not going to be super into the Browns team. If playing the 4 p.m. only slate, you definitely need to be different if waiting to get ahead of others. Overstacking a certain game is probably an option. Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to overstack a game, the game that I would overstack would be Bucks and Falcons. Why? First off, Brady is like my favorite quarterback to overstack with, right? Because if I'm stacking Kyler, for instance, part of the equation I'm stacking Kyler is I probably want him to run a touchdown in. Right, so if I want him to run a touchdown in, that takes one away from the wide receiver. So I don't really want to play like Kyler and Hopkins and one of Green, Rondale, or Kirk, because if I'm playing Kyler and Hopkins, I'm probably banking on 2 Hopkins touchdowns. I probably want a third touchdown to be a Kyler rushing touchdown. Then it's like, okay, so now am I playing for a 4th touchdown that's going to go to Rondale or Kirk or Green? Like I don't know. We're starting to get a little bit thin here. With Brady, like he's not going to do any of the scoring running. So if he's going to have a massive game, it probably has to be to 2 of the pass catchers, right? Like we saw in week 1. We saw a massive Brady game in week 1. And it was, you could have played 3, right? Like Godwin had a big game, Brown, and Gronk, right? So it's probably going to be at least 2 if you get a Brady ceiling game. So I want to overstack that game. Also, because probably not that many people are going to play it. So pick whatever you want. Pick Gronk, pick Evans, Godwin, and Brown, and pick 2 of those with Brady, and then pick Ridley or Pitts, and good to go. I think that's a pretty easy game to stack, actually, and that's a great 3v1. So I would say I'm more likely to overstack that than I would be to overstack Minnesota, Arizona. Definitely more likely to overstack it than the big Chargers and Dallas game. Let's see, quick. Cole Beasley gets a lot of 100-yard games, man. Yeah, he did not receive the vaccine against the DK bonus for 100-yard games. That's for sure. He's living free, and he's $4,600, and he got 14 targets. And I'll tell you what, I'm not vaccinated against Cole Beasley exposure this week. I'm going to be about as exposed to Cole Beasley as he is to COVID-19. That's for sure. Gotta love Cole Beasley. All right. When we return really quick, we're going to touch on my personal game of the week. Not because I think it's the best game, right? Obviously, the best game is Cowboys-Chargers. What I think is the most interesting game, and a game that I'm going to make sure I get a little bit of exposure to. So that'll be coming up right away. All right. We are almost done. These things are so fast, man. I'm trying to get these, I'm trying to do 2 things at once. Number 1 is that I'm prioritizing drinking, right? And then number 2 is I'm trying to find the graphics. And clearly my number 1 priority was drinking. So I'm sorry. But here we're going to talk about some plays of the week. Number 1 play of the week. My favorite quarterback this week is Jalen Hurts. Eagles looked awesome, like extremely awesome. They trounced the Falcons, and everyone's assuming that the Falcons are bad, and they probably should assume that the Falcons are bad. What if the Eagles are just good, man? Like the Eagles, I thought executed a really smart game plan. They got Hurts involved in run-pass options. They got him running the ball. They got him chucking to his playmakers like Rager and Gainwell and Sanders in space. And then Devontae Smith had like a seriously good alpha role. He was number 3 of the NFL in air yard share. He had 25% of the targets, and he's extremely cheap. And I think because so many people are going to play Dallas and Chargers this week, others might play Arizona, Minnesota. I think that this game is like 3rd at best ownership-wise, probably going to be 4th or 5th. So I want to play Hurts and Smith. My top lineup this week could change. Okay, could always change. Like for instance, I got like really into Seattle Indy late last week after I was on my column. I think my top single entry lineup this week is going to be with Hurts, Smith, Kittle. Might even do a 3v1 with Rager in there. And then I'm probably going to do Zeke and Cook. So sort of the leverage play there in the late game. And if things go like crazy well, if I just like totally nut the stack, then maybe I'll work in Lamb and Allen or Lamb Williams, right? I have optionality. I could try to force Dalvin Cook in, right? If I want to do that at running back, I could try to pivot in a different direction. So I really like playing this game with Hurts and Smith, just because I think it gives you, I think, first of all, a really good stack. And it's the only alternate stack that I'm super attracted to that's early. The other one that I'm actually into, and I've talked about Cole Beasley a lot, is Bills Dolphins. The Dolphins, they're who we thought they were. They came out, they threw the ball. They didn't throw it overly effectively. But I think New England is one of the best defenses in the league. And I know Buffalo's defense played well last week, but Miami gets to go back home. I would have been more into this if Fuller was playing. But I like what I saw to Waddle. Parker looked not like a total corpse. So I'm not going to play the Dolphin side of this, but I saw enough that I'm definitely willing to do some Josh Allen with Diggs, and then either Beasley, who I mentioned, or Knox, Dawson Knox, 4 targets, pretty much in every pass down tight end. Dawson Knox is in, and then chuck in Parker or Waddle on the way back, and then see how it goes, and then assess the late swap. So 2 of my favorite games to play are going to be Bills Dolphins, that I don't think anyone's going to play at all, and then Eagles and 49ers. While I'm on that Eagles 49ers game, I mean, who do you play on the Niners side, right? That's where it gets a little bit crazy. I don't want to play Debo at 6,700 coming off a massive game. Like that's pricey. That is pricey. Like I can play AJ Brown for $200 more, which I don't even talk about that game at all, by the way. That game is a little bit weather dependent for me. If it's like raining a little bit and people are scared of it, I'll probably play it a lot. And if it's raining like a ton and the ownership still looks high, then I'd rather fade it. That's why I haven't talked about it that much, because frankly, a lot of my decisions are going to be made based on the weather. But in general, if it looks good, then I like that game too, of course, especially if the rostership comes in a little bit low and I can get like Russ stacks again. On the 49ers side, right? So Kittle is my favorite. I mean, he had a pretty muted game. I don't think that's the norm. Kittle destroyed the Eagles last year. I mean, totally different scheme and totally different everything. But he had like 40 points against the Eagles last year. And I don't know, are that people going to play George Kittle this week? Like with Waller there, with Higbee there, with Cook there. People want to play the Cowboys tight ends. I think we're like, he's not going to be unowned, but it's not going to be anything crazy. And on a slate without Kelsey, without Andrews, without Hawkinson, George Kittle could easily be the top tight end this week. And I want to play him. I mean, like, look, I'm going to play one Brandon Ayuk lineup probably because, I don't know, I'm a glutton for punishment. And then I'll also play one Trent Sherfield lineup at 3,200. So one of each, I guess. As for these running backs, I'm probably just going to avoid. I might play one Mitchell lineup, but these guys aren't going to catch passes. Like, I think Hasty's going to play the passing downs. And then we're going to see a split on early downs that involves Mitchell for probably about half of them, potentially Sermon for the other half, maybe Hasty, maybe Trenton Cannon. I don't know. If we're going to play any of them, I'm probably going to play Mitchell, but I think I'm going to probably avoid. So I think it's mostly just Kittle on the Niners side. I don't want to play any Jimmy, of course, because I mean, like, I don't know what we're going to expect from Jimmy as a DFS option. So probably Kittle, but I mean, I have so many different options on the Eagles. I want to play Hurts and Smith are my 2 favorites, but Sanders had a really fun role last week. Maybe they get way behind and you could chuck in Gainwell. I mean, I probably won't, but I don't think it's crazy. And Rager had a really good role. Goddard had a pretty good role. So I'm open to things there. And specifically what I like doing in this game is I'm going to have double tight end lineups. So I'm going to consider Kittle Goddard within the same game, or I'll play Kittle at tight end and then flex Jared Cook later. I think that'll be pretty unique. I'm not sure how many people are going to play double tight end lineups this week. And that's definitely something that I'm considering to make my lineup just a little bit extra unique. is put Kittle at tight end and then plan to flex either Goddard or Jared Cook later, or potentially I might even consider Noah Fant because I like him as a play this week. My other play of the week would be Deontay Johnson, and I think it's pretty obvious why. Everyone's going to play Najee Harris like we talked about. Deontay Johnson, his snap rate didn't look awesome because he got injured a little bit. He's still the number one target on this team. Clearly, they're playing the Raiders, who, their pass rush looked strong, but their secondary looked pretty gross against the Ravens. I mean, Marquise Brown and Sammy Watkins are running free, I think, whenever they wanted to. And if Ben has to get rid of it quickly because of this Raiders D line that seems quite improved, that's probably less Claypool-centric, more Deontay Johnson-centric, maybe more Juju too, but I just like Deontay's upside a little bit more. So give me Deontay, who gets double leverage. You get leverage off Najee, and then you get what I call price leverage, which isn't really leverage because you're not actually benefiting the other's failure. But what you're basically getting is you're going to get, okay, everyone's going to play CeeDee Lamb. That makes them less likely to play Deontay Johnson. It specifically makes them less likely to play Deontay Johnson, CeeDee Lamb together. And so if Deontay outscores CeeDee and outscores Harris, you're burying two of the highest rosters players on the slate. So my plays of the week, and I always say this, there are no best plays, right? Like if you want to know what the best plays are, pay for a projection service, scroll to the top, and then select, right? So the best plays are just the best projected plays. But my favorite plays, that I think are most interesting, are going to be iterations of Eagles-Niners, iterations of Bills-Dolphins, and then Deontay Johnson as a really fun leverage play. And I mentioned, of course, Cook and Guyton, who I like a lot as well. Maddie says a double tight end call is interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to feel like a tournament bro, you go two tight end. And Mike says, what's up, Jacob? What's up, Mike? Nice to see you in here, Mike. That's awesome, man. Thanks for coming in and joining. All right. 2 sections to go. Really quick. We got a sneaky athlete of the week. Actually, a pretty exciting sneaky athlete of the week in a game that I have not even talked about yet. And then we're going to come back. We're going to play GVP roulette, and then we will wrap the show up. So we'll see you for the sneaky athlete of the week. Don't go anywhere. All right. Sneaky athlete of the week. I mean, you want to talk about someone who is sneaking up on you from an athletic perspective. Look no further than a guy who sounds like he was one of the extras from The Departed. James O'Shaughnessy ran 77% of the routes, had a 20% target per route run, and he's free. He's free on a team that's going to pass a lot. They're going to pass a lot because Denver's probably going to blow them out. And you know what? If you want to play James Shaughnessy, how about this? You stack him with Javonte Williams at 4,400. FF Aviator says, don't talk about it. Yeah, I'm playing Javonte this week. Look, my lineups are never set, but what I usually do is I make lineups on Friday as a skeleton. Then I go in Saturday night and I revise. And then I revise again on Sunday morning when I see the final ownership. And Javonte right now, I'm playing him in, I think, 2 or 3 lineups. So you got it, FF Aviator. I'm playing Javonte Williams. But James O'Shaughnessy is my sneaky athlete of the week. He probably sucks. He's basically a right tackle, but that's why he's so sneaky. And he could be a sneaky play. So if you're streaming tight end, especially if you're in like a 2 tight end league, go to your waiver wire, pick up James O'Shaughnessy. He plays for the Jaguars, by the way, in case you weren't aware. And if you want a really, really cheap tight end, say you want to play Kyler, Cook, and Hopkins. Pretty expensive. How are you going to make it work? Maybe you make it work with James O'Shaughnessy. And quickly, I'll answer one more question before we get to the roulette. Sweaty in the chat says, Jared Cook or Robert Tonyan rest the season. I still think Tonyan. I liked Tonyan. It was discouraging that Marquez Valdes-Scantling clearly looked like the number 2 option. I thought Tonyan might get that role. But one game where they ran like 17 plays in the first half. Not panicking on Tonyan. I want to see him on Monday night, so I'll say Tonyan. But I'm pretty content with what I saw out of Cook as well this year. All right, I need to get set up on the screen share situation. So while I do that, I'm just going to play one more little interlude. And when we come back, we're going to play GPP roulette. Do not go anywhere. All right, guys. How are we doing here? Let's get back to this. And this should get all set up. Here we go. All right. For those of us who did not join last week, here is how we do GPP roulette. All right. Earlier today on Twitter, I asked you all to give me 36 running backs and or wide receivers on the main slate. And frankly, if you said tight ends, I included them. We almost got there. For the rest, I just literally scrolled Twitter, and as I saw names, I just added them, okay? So I have a Microsoft Word document in front of me. I will show you that Microsoft Word document right now, just so that you can clearly see that this is real, okay? Do you see this? It's real. These are the names. This is what the numbers correlate to, okay? There we go. And so now we're going to go back to our window. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin a roulette wheel twice. And then we're going to go to DraftKings. And we're going to make a lineup, the best lineup we can, all right? I'm taking the timer off. Last time we did a timer, I don't really see what the point of the timer is, because all it does is it makes me create crappier lineups, and it makes me not explain the process very good. So I don't think it's very helpful. Really quickly before we do this, Svetty says, thanks for the episode with Mike Mia. Yeah, I was on with Mike Liu for Marco Watch Mondays. Had a lot of fun. People understand this. Look, I encourage you, and in fact, I will give you 30 seconds while I spin the wheel to go to DraftKings right now. We're going to do this on DraftKings. Open it up so you can help out in the chat, okay? Help out, please. Help out, please. And the point of this is not just for funsies, okay? But also so that you can see that you truly can make a nice lineup with pretty much any players you want to play. So we're starting with 2 random players from a roulette wheel, and then we're going to build a lineup from there, keeping in mind projection, correlation, and leverage. And then I will update over the season whether this lineup ever wins anything, because I'm going to play it we'll probably do it in like the $5 milli over the course of the season. Last week, did not cash, did not do anything. But we played Zach Pascal. That was pretty cool. You know, didn't matter. Didn't matter. All right. Let's do this, baby. Let's do this. We're going to spin this wheel. And we're spinning. And we're spinning. And we're spinning. And it landed on 15. Landed on 15. All right, who we got here? Pulling up. 15 is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor. All right. I'm into that. I'm into that. We're running the damn ball, baby. Running the damn ball. All right, one more time. Who are we putting in this lineup with Jonathan Taylor? Well, on a 25. 25. 25. Who is it in the chat? Who is in the chat that said Anthony Schwartz? FF Aviator, are you here? Are you here? I said maybe we'd have to play Anthony Schwartz. We're playing Anthony Schwartz. All right, here we go. We're gonna do. Let's do this in the play action, because look, I don't want to lose $20. That's for sure. Create new lineup. Oh, I should probably share my screen to my DraftKings, shouldn't I? Yes, I should. There we go. Share. Share screen. Chrome tab. DraftKings. All right, let's do this. All right, can everybody see here that we have our DraftKings set up? Yes, you can. Perfect. FF Aviator says, yup. We're locking him in. We're locking him in. I reserve the right to swap if he doesn't play. I know he has a sprained knee. So how about this? Who's playing here at 3,300? Who's the swap option? Just so people are keeping track at home. If Anthony Schwartz does not play this week due to a knee, first person to comment in the chat, do you prefer Terrace Marshall or KJ Osborne? I'll play Marshall or Osborne if Aviator doesn't go. Or if Schwartz doesn't go. See that, Aviator? You are now Anthony Schwartz. First person to comment Marshall or Osborne in the chat, you get the backup, okay? Now we're going to put in Jonathan Taylor. All right. I'm seeing Marshall. All right, so Marshall's our backup if Schwartz can't go. All right, so first off, what should we be thinking here? We're already playing Taylor. I'm seeing Michael saying the quarterback should be Hurts, and that's doable. Counterpoint: Jonathan Taylor is in our lineup. Okay, Stafford, like that seems like the obvious appeal to me, is that we're already going to be playing Stafford. I certainly don't want to do a Brown stack, right? So I think like, yeah, we could just kind of go in and make this lineup and make it fit around whatever. So we could do Hurts. But personally, like I kind of want to build this lineup around what the roulette wheel tells us, right? So I want to play Stafford in this lineup because we're already going to be playing Jonathan Taylor. And I think Stafford's a fine enough play. He's cheap enough play. So if we lock in Stafford, right? I think if we're locking in Stafford, we're already playing Schwartz, who's super cheap. So I don't really need to play like a Higbee Jefferson thing. So I think we'll probably just play Kupp. He ran all the routes and he was the best, right? He's going to be Chalk City, but Taylor won't be. So I'm not really that worried about it. Summers has played DeAndre Swift, Taylor Swift. Sadly, he's not on the main slate. I can't do it. Otherwise, I would. But I can't play Monday Night Players. All right. Stafford, similar to Brady, right? He's not going to run the ball. And this is going to be probably an under-owned game. I mean, maybe not the pieces of it, but I would say I want to play Van or I want to play Higbee. I don't really want to play Woods, both because Kupp and Woods a little pricey, and Woods had like a really gross role in week 1, and I don't particularly want to play him in DFS because I don't even think he'll be that under-owned. So how about this? Anyone in the chat says the next 30 seconds, Van or Higbee, I will take the first one. Otherwise, I will choose Van or Higbee. Meanwhile, I'm going to scroll and try to figure out how to do the rest of this freaking lineup. Tell me Van or Higbee. Van Jefferson may be a cheap play. Perfect. Mike says play Van. We're playing Van the man. Right? This is we're doing the week 1 redux, right? We're playing all these cheap wide receivers. Okay, now it's time to spend. All right, we already have Van. We already have Schwartz. So we got like the cheapest possible wide receivers. And now I need to think about this lineup. I'm thinking I have Schwartz, who probably is not going to be super popular. Van, probably not going to be super popular. Taylor, no one's going to be playing him. So at this point, I don't really have to worry about roster shift that much. I can pretty much put in chalk. And the other thing is we're playing like a super cheap wide receiver group. So I can spend up at tight end. I could probably spend up at running back. I could probably spend up at both. First thing, let's lock in here at running back. Like we're gonna pay up now because we've saved all the salary. We have room to pay up. Let's take McCaffrey or Cook or Kamara. Feel free in the chat. Who do you want to play? You want to play McCaffrey or Cook or Kamara? I have no like strong feelings about any of the three. They all seem pretty awesome to me. From like a bring back perspective, I'm probably going to want a secondary stack here. So if I play McCaffrey, we could be looking at more in the flex. Cook, perfect. So we're going to lock in Cook. You can swap DPJ if Schwartz doesn't play. Yeah, I could. I don't want to, though. I don't want to play either of these guys. Safety hater. I would rather just play Njoku, I think. All right, Cook. So how about this? Let's do a secondary correlation. I assume we don't have enough money to play Hopkins, right? Yeah, that's going to get to average. Actually, we could. We could play Hop. $32.50 per player. We can go cheap tight end. Right? And then we can go cheap defense. I think I want to do that. So let's do Hop in here. And then what does that leave us with at defense? Let's say if I like lock in a pretty cheap defense that I don't totally hate, right? Let's say we played like I'm not playing any Najee Harris, right? So I kind of like the Raiders defense this week because they got pressure, Ben's a statue, and it's leverage off of Harris. And what does that leave us with at tight end? We have 3,700. I'll play Cole Kmet. He had a pretty good role last week. If I wanted to play Jared Cook at tight end, what would I have to do at defense? I could play the Dolphins. I don't want to play the Chargers. Couldn't afford the Panthers. How about this? I'm not seeing your. I'm gonna put this in. Any objections to this lineup? If people would rather swap out different defense combinations with tight end, I'm very open to that. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with this. You have like 10 seconds for objections. All right, seeing none. Let's run through this lineup. Okay, I think it's actually a good lineup. I would totally play this lineup, and now I will. You get a 3+1 stack: Stafford, Kupp, Van, Taylor. All right, that's pretty much the same idea as what I played last week, right? I played Russ, Everett, Lockett, Taylor in that lineup that did well. Okay, that saves a bunch of salary. So now we get to do Cook, Hopkins. That's pretty fun, right? And so what are we looking at? What's our win condition now? Our win condition is basically Stafford outscores Kyler, and that knocks out the rest of those options. And then you're also able to afford, so the premium stack, but hopefully Stafford outscores Kyler, and you're able to afford Taylor, right? No one's going to have Taylor in a Kyler, Cook, Hopkins stack. And so now if Taylor goes off and Stafford outscores Kyler, you're getting leverage over the Minnesota, Arizona teams. You're just hoping that Dallas Chargers doesn't totally crush your soul. And then you got to think if Stafford is outscoring Kyler, that some of that goes to Kupp. Hopefully some of it goes to Van. And then the rest is just cheap, right? Anthony Schwartz. Okay, cool. Hopefully he gets a long touchdown. Cole Kmet. Hopefully he gets any touchdown. That's really all you need at tight end. Defense is defense. It's your leverage off Harris, right? I think that's a really fun lineup. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to go and hit enter. Yeah, I promise I'll play this lineup. I'm not really sure why it's saying this, but we'll do this on my phone if that's not allowed me to do that. Saying I'll play Everett over Kmet, I wouldn't. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but Everett ran like half the routes, and Kmet's running all the routes. So I will be playing Kmet over Everett this week in cash. But in tournaments, you can absolutely do whatever you want. Anyway, I don't know what's going on my computer. I haven't submitted a DraftKings lineup on my computer forever. I always do it off my phone. But I will submit this lineup, I promise. And we will update you how it does next week. Folks, this was an absolute blast. I had a lot of fun with this. I hope that you had fun. Thanks for chilling in the chat this whole time. I mean, that was awesome. That was awesome. Lots of questions, lots of comments, lots of livelihood. We will do this again next week. We will probably integrate some guests into it at some point. Last announcements, you can find me on Twitter, of course, FF_RTDB. You can find my column this week on DFS, The Pareto Principles, Volume 2. You can find that pinned to the top of my player profile. You can also find it on playerprofiler.com. And you can always check me out on the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast. This is part of the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast network. With Tom, with Billy on Fridays. You can find The Walkabout, of course, with Tom and Tom Tipple and Tom Lee on the same network. And you can find all of our stuff on the Full Tilt YouTube channel. Maybe some of you are watching it right now on that. You can find it on the Dynasty Vipers YouTube channel. You can find me, of course, tilting through all of the games as we go on Sunday. It's going to be an absolute blast. And the last thing, if you want to play along, right? Maybe DFS isn't your thing. Maybe just DFS isn't enough. Maybe you're already dead after the early games. You want to look at other things to play. You can play all sorts of prop contests at Thrive Fantasy. Go to Thrive Fantasy. The link for Thrive Fantasy is in the YouTube description for this broadcast. So you can head over to YouTube, either Dynasty Vipers YouTube or Full Tilt Dynasty YouTube. And you click on the description. And if you enter the promo code Full Tilt, all caps, Full Tilt, FULLTILT, that gets you up to $100 deposit match. So you deposit $100, you get $100. Right? Very beginning of this, Taylor said, how do I make back $5? You make back $5 by getting $100 for free at Thrive Fantasy using promo code Full Tilt. That's all for me. Thank you. And have a lovely time with the rest of your Saturday and Sunday. Keep me up to date, man. Just check in. Tell me how your lines are doing. I'm always happy to hear from you. So have a blast. Have a good one.